As luck would have it, we did a podcast yesterday, and about 32 seconds later, Jeremiah Beamon committed to the University of Alabama, which we will discuss. I tried to go live with it, and of course, my internet was terrible, so I erased that video altogether. So it's like you've never seen it before. Let's pretend like that's the way it is.
Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. And Jimmy, if it weren't for technical snafus, I would have nary a snafu in my life. That is untrue. My whole life is considered a snafu. But Jimmy, go ahead.
Yeah, the technical problems are our show. You know, like sometimes like in a sitcom or a drama, and it takes place in New York City, and then some person says, you know, New York City is a character on the show. So our technical problems are basically your third host.
Yeah, it's like there was a show that that was like a knockoff of oh God, what was the Al Bundy show? What was that called?
Married with Children.
Yeah, Married with Children. There was a show that was a knockoff of that, and that was for the CW, and they had a little alien space creature, almost like Alf, as a cast member. That's what this show would be. A CW knockoff of a good podcast was an alien for some reason. So, but Jimmy, let's talk a little bit about something good here, as I'm going to try and switch over to my good camera. Jeremiah Beamon from Parker High School has decided to commit to Alabama. This is wonderful news on a lot of fronts. One thing I didn't talk about yesterday was that he's got some very highly coveted teammates. He's got one of the top 10 prospects in the country for next year as a defensive back on that team. But let's keep it focused on Mr. Beamon, and he is a defensive tackle, and he is a big dude. And just to kind of stick it in the old crawl of one of our rivals here, I'm going to put up his picture. And he's got an Auburn football thing on. Hey, y'all didn't get him. We did. But, yeah. And Jeremiah Beamon, I think he's got a lot of potential. And he's going to be I think he's going to be even more highly rated when the season's out. I think he's still growing a little bit, and I think he's got a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah, I'm going to claim. I think sometimes on the message boards they call it an e-victory. I'm going to claim a little bit of an e-victory here. I like Beamon from the jump. I mean, the very first time I saw him, and when I saw him, and loved him. I don't even think he had an Alabama offer, and I was worried with his size he might not ever get one. But I loved him, and I'm like, man, this is exactly that type kid that ends up going to Auburn, gains the weight, and then ends up being a pretty big deal. And I was literally worried about that. We all just saw him with the shirt on. It's probably during a period of time when Auburn was recruiting very hard and Alabama was not. But Alabama eventually did the work, or did more work, talked to the right people, saw the kid, and really did a 180. He went from I'm not sure we're going to offer him to high priority. I mean, almost overnight. And this was a couple months ago, so I feel like I was a little bit ahead of the curve there. With Jeremiah, who's now a national top 100 player for the On3 industry ranking that takes into account everybody's rankings. He's a national top 100. He's very deserving of that. I was very high on Beamon. Like I said, had he even never gotten the Alabama offer and gone to Auburn, I'd be saying the exact same thing. Really high on him. I love defensive tackle prospects, Luke, who are athletes. Beamon plays outside a lot. He's fast. He's an athletic kid. I think he had something like 3 interceptions last season, which is a crazy number for a down lineman. But he's that sort of athlete, you know. And hey, he's a little light in the britches right now for that position that he's eventually going to play, which leads me to my comp. And I'm not saying he's going to be Quinnen Williams. That's nuts. That I'm saying, oh, one day he'll be the 3rd pick in the draft and the National Defensive Player of the Year. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is he's like Quinnen. And he's like Quinnen in this way. Quinnen was an athlete that we thought one day would grow into a 290 or 300 pound, and that's what happened. Beamon's the same way. He's going to show up at Alabama probably in the 255 or 260 range, little like Jordan Renaud that way. And then what we hope is, and what we believe will happen is, as he grows to 270s and 280s and 290, he's going to retain that athleticism. We got to remember Quentin Williams, as good as he was, he redshirted. I can easily see that happening with Beamon as we just put on the good weight, work to build him into a defensive tackle. And then not only do you have a quality 300-pound body inside like Quentin Williams, if y'all remember what made Q so great, he was an unblockable pass rusher from the inside. And man, when you're getting a good pass rush from the inside, now you're getting the quarterback off his rhythm. Now you're flushing the quarterback before he can finish his drops. Beamon's just a big time pickup for me. And bonus, like Luke smartly mentioned, bonus is or a 2025 cornerback is one of the top 10 prospects in the entire country, regardless of position. And there's another defensive lineman that plays with Beamon who's going to get a long look from Alabama in the 2025 class as well. Not sure he'll be a take, but I was saying the same thing about Beamon just a few months ago. Look at him now. So really nice pickup that gives Alabama 7 commitments, way ahead of the normal pace from the last couple of cycles. The recruiting calendar's flipped, it's changed, and now you need to be more careful because you're going to rack up commitments in July and August. That's when you're going to practically finish the whole class based on recent history. So we have 7 now, probably signing around 25, 26 commitments. I think it's a fair number to guess. Already at 7. But man, when you look at the 7, Luke, I like them all. The guy I would rank the lowest, Rico Scott. He's so good. When he was a real young player in Alabama's camp last summer, Alabama looked at him, offered him immediately, and said, "You're a take. We want you, pal," and stuck with that. So our lowest rated guy is the guy Alabama immediately wanted when they saw him in camp as a young player.
Just to catch everybody up, so first of all, Jeremiah Beamon is this is all according to 24/7, and it sort of fluctuates, but national 107, position number 13, and in the state of Alabama, he's number 7. So let's run down the 7 commitments Alabama does have. Julian Sayin, who's a 5-star, Jalen Mbakwe is a 5-star, Perry Thompson is a 5-star. Then there's Jeremiah Beamon, who's the highest rated 4-star, Caden Jones, another 4-star, Sterling Dixon from down in Mobile, another 4-star, Enrico Scott, who is a 4-star. He's the only one that falls outside the top 250. He's at number 387, but still ranked a 4-star. And a lot of people believe he will move up. Maybe he'll get the Bama bump, or it could also be 100% legitimate. But that is the foundation of a pretty incredible class, especially when you think about some of the guys Alabama's still in on. Yeah, this class is not slowing down anytime soon. Love this whole bunch, and it's only getting better. So, Jimmy, let me go ahead and tell everybody about Built Bar. Built Bar is a protein bar that tastes exactly like a candy bar. I talk about it all the time. You know how good they are. They're covered in 100% real chocolate. You can get them at Walmart. You can get them at Amazon. You can get them at Sam's Club. You can get them at Lifetime Fitness. You can get them at Built.com. But if you're looking for a snack that won't pack on the pounds, then this is what you want. It doesn't have all the sugar and all the calories, but it's got a load of protein for you. So they're healthy and they taste amazing. You can get the flavors like churro or peanut butter brownie or cookies and cream. I don't know how they do it. They're magicians or wizards or sorcerers. I watched Aladdin the other night with my daughter. Maybe, they got a little Jafar over there just sprinkling sorcerer dust all over everything. I don't know, but they do a great job. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein per bar on average. That's pretty amazing. Go to Walmart, go to Sam's Club, go to Built.com, go to Amazon, wherever you want to go to get a Built Bar, you can probably get it. Honestly, they should be everywhere because we all need to eat a little healthier, and Built.com is where you want to go. On tomorrow's podcast, we're going to continue Jimmy's countdown. Who knows? Maybe we'll have another commitment. I didn't think we'd have a commitment today. And then as soon as we finish the podcast, it's like, hey, let's throw a monkey wrench in Luke and Jimmy's night. Jimmy's, drinking away with the neighbors, celebrating softball. Luke is sitting at home in his underwear, shirtless, and he sees the Jeremiah Beamon commitment. I'm like, Jimmy and I need to go live. Well, Jimmy can't do it because Jimmy's been drinking. So Luke goes live. My audio craps out. Apparently, everybody goes, "This is why we want Jimmy on the show." I cry. I go drink myself, and then now here we are. So, anyway, so Jimmy, I want to talk about just a quick subject here. We like to address things from our listeners and watchers whenever we can. And Cameron Bishop has taken the time out of his incredibly busy schedule. I don't even know what he does, but I'm assuming it's busy. He's taken time out of his day to write us and says, "Can you and Jimmy speak on Tennessee high school football recruiting? Not the University of Tennessee football recruiting, Tennessee high schools, but just overall the level of talent in a Tennessee high school system, for years." Now, look, what he's saying is it's very surprising that they seem to not put out as much talent as other states. Okay. I think that's true. And Jimmy, I want to let you talk about it, but while you're talking about it, I want to go back and look at rankings and sort of illustrate this a little more, because I think he's dead right. And we've always said this, like the state of Tennessee, it seems like they might put out a dude or two,
Right.
for the year, but they just don't seem to put out the same level. Not even as Alabama and Tennessee, a bigger state. They got Nashville, which is certainly bigger. They've got Knoxville, which is a really big city. I mean, people forget Knoxville's really big. They got Memphis, which Alabama fans know they got some dudes over there, and they ain't afraid to play the recruiting game sometimes. But look at this. Just look at 2024. They got Caleb Beasley from Lipscomb Academy that's in Nashville. He's the number 102 player, and that's their top-rated player in the state. Their next top-rated player in the state is number 229, Edwin Spillman, who's a linebacker. And after that, their next rated player is a 4-star, but he's nationally not rated, in Mason Khurtis. And just going back to 2023, for example, and these are just 2 examples. I don't know why. It always makes me reset the state when I change the year. There's Caleb Herring, who's an edge rusher. He was number 123 in the country. Alabama's got like 3 5-stars this year. So
Yeah.
it's just weird. I think Cameron's right. And I guess he's asking for the explanation, and I don't know what to tell him.
Well, it is overall a low population state compared to Georgia, which puts out a ton of players. Florida puts out a ton of players. Louisiana puts out a ton of players. Those 3 states in the South are really big in terms of quantity, right? I mean, they put out a ton of players. Well, they're also much larger population states. Tennessee more in line with Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, South Carolina in terms of the size of the population. So that's the biggest factor. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, I think Tennessee has 2 population centers that are really interesting in recruiting. Number 1, and this is the good news, Cameron, Nashville is growing huge. Nashville is one of the most growing cities in the United States. It's huge and getting huger by the month, and recruiting is getting better there. While Luke has spoken to a couple of cycles that don't appear to be really good, I can tell you from talking to people in the recruiting industry and coaches that Nashville is sort of a booming recruiting city. It might not show up in this cycle, but the feeling is that Nashville is going to be a really big deal very soon in recruiting, just because of the size of the metro area and the fact that the schools are good. So there's good coaching there. There's good programs there in Nashville. And I think Nashville is going to become one of the hotbeds down the road and probably sooner rather than later. Memphis has always produced players. That's the second population center. Memphis has always produced players. You just have issues there with the quality of schools and not all kids always being academically eligible that are good players there. So you have to recruit Memphis. Alabama recruits Memphis very closely and keeps a close watch on Memphis because there's always guys. It's just that there's probably more talent there, and not all of them are going to have their grades. A lot of kids from Memphis end up in the Mississippi junior college system where they are re-recruited and re-coached. So those are the two population centers, and those are the issues there. Like we've said, East Tennessee's okay. Knoxville's okay. It's going to produce players similar to maybe how Huntsville produces players. There will be players from East Tennessee occasionally, but and then everything else in Tennessee is very rural. So low population, not enough to generate a ton of recruits. So no different than rural Mississippi or rural Alabama. So
hey, I, I just love it when we Southern people say rural.
yeah, no, I can't say it right. It was bothering me while it was trying to come out of my mouth. I'm like, that's a word I don't say well. I'm too Southern to say rural. And the funny thing is, the whole South is rural. I can't even say it right.
That is the irony. It is the irony.
Yeah, you would think, yeah.
When you said it the first time,
we have no urban centers, and I say that extremely well.
When you said it the first time, I was like, "Oh, that's nice." Jimmy just started eating peanut butter while he was talking.
I know, yeah. I'm gonna have to go to.
I do it too.
School. I have to go to podcasting school to say that word correctly. But anyway, that's my explanation. But Nashville is Tennessee's hope to really get in the recruiting game because of the growth. Good, Trent Dilfer was there. Quarterback, I can't remember if it was the 23 cycle or the 22 cycle. Tennessee had like 5 of the best quarterbacks in the nation were in Tennessee in one cycle just a year or two ago. Kenny Minchie was one of them, and Brock Glenn was one of them. And then there's more than that. And this year there's a couple of quarterbacks up there. By the way, there's George McIntyre is a 2025 quarterback from Nashville. He is outstanding. Alabama loves him. And there's a 2026 quarterback from Nashville named Jared Curtis that everybody wants. 2026 is Jared Curtis. If you haven't heard that name yet, very likely to be the number 1 quarterback in the nation in his class. And he's from Nashville. And again, McIntyre or someone. Alabama's going to carefully, not that Alabama's going to have their choice between the two, but George McIntyre and KJ Lacey in the 2025 are 2 of Alabama's top targets. And they're, and of course, McIntyre, like Jared Curtis.
And to be fair, in 2022, they did have Walter Nolan, who was number 2 player in the country. They had Ty Simpson, and they also had Berrien Brown, who was only a 4-star, but he wound up being pretty doggone incredible. I'd take him at Alabama right now.
Should have been a 5-star based on his freshman season at Kentucky.
Yeah, but then I go, so I'm like, okay, 2022 seems to be a bit of an outlier because they had 2 5-stars and a guy that probably should have been a 5-star. But then I go to 2021. This is apropos of nothing. I just think this is funny. The number 1 player in the state of Tennessee for 2021 went to Clemson, number 86 player in the country. His name was Jake Briningstool. Like that, I'm like, good Lord, that's the worst name I've ever heard. Briningstool?
It's a lot to put on a jersey.
Well, I mean, just like in the old times, weren't your last names sort of they were related to whatever you did for a living or wherever you came from? Like Vito Corleone
perfectly explains that I'm named after a beer glass.
Well, his name was Briningstool. Can you imagine? Hey, we got to get that stool brined. Let's go over see Jake. So anyway, all right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get back into the countdown with Khurtis Perry. And we're back. So now, Jimmy, we're going to talk about Khurtis Blow Perry. I'm giving him that nickname because, I mean, who doesn't love basketball? He had some other great songs. I don't remember any off the top of my head, but he also very famously wore a camo hat, which made him cool in my book. So, yeah, Khurtis Perry. This was one of my most coveted signees from a couple years ago. Really wanted him to burst onto the scene. I know there's a lack of size. I know there's some other things like that, but boy, I loved watching him play. And it seemed like every time he did play, he made a sack or 2 or 10. So, Jimmy, can I count on him to be more of a player this year?
Probably not this year. I think he's just a little squeezed out, to be honest. I still like Khurtis Perry a lot. Have him as a 74th ranked player on the 2023 team. I know that's low. That's because I don't expect to see much of him. And it's not a reflection on Khurtis. This is kind of getting to a part of the list that just kind of shows off Alabama's depth. Alabama's depth 1 through 85 is probably the best there is in college football. Only Georgia and Ohio State, I think, could come close. And Khurtis is a good example of that. Look, you have 15 defense ownership. and you really only want to play 6 or 7. I know some people are like, oh, no, you want to play 10. Here's the problem with playing 10 defensive linemen with your first team is if you're trying to rotate 10 guys, no one's got 10 that are exactly alike. No one's got 1 through 10 and they're all the same. No, that's never happened at any level in any sport. There is a hierarchy of if you got 10 guys, the coach, whether it's the head coach or the position coach, can rank them 1 through 10, and 10 isn't as good as 1. So if you're playing 10, now all of a sudden it's early in the fourth quarter, you're playing LSU and the whole season's on the line, and you look out there and your 4th, 6th, and 9th best defensive linemen are on the field. And your 1st, 2nd, and 3rd guys are completely rested. They're just sitting there not playing while other players are playing, and they're rested because you played so many, you know. But you don't want your 4th, 6th, and 9th guy out there in the fourth quarter against an LSU or a Tennessee or Auburn. So that's why 6 or 7 is an ideal number, because you can keep your best 3 rested if you're playing 6 or 7. And Khurtis Perry, to be honest, is not in the top 6 or 7 defensive linemen right now. He might be in the future. Where I really get excited about Perry, I'm going to bring up a name here that might disappoint some of y'all, but y'all have to remember this. There's a real highly recruited defensive lineman from Prattville that showed up at Alabama and didn't do much for about 3 years. But in years 4 and 5, he became one of our best situational players on the team, helped us win a championship, and that's Nick Gentry from Prattville. I think Khurtis Perry's a lot like Nick, and I know it's not the career that a lot of people might have been hoping for Khurtis, but if Khurtis Perry can just give us Nick Gentry, that helped us win national championships in the past. And Khurtis can be that type of guy. I see him as a 3rd down interior pass rusher. You still have to line up guys on the interior, bigger bodied guys. I think Khurtis Perry is just built to do that and can be a fantastic interior pass rusher on 3rd down situations. That's sort of what I see for him, but that probably wouldn't happen in 2023. That's going to be off in the future.
The one thing that would, I do like that comp. I think Khurtis Perry is more explosive than Gentry, even though Gentry was really good. I think he's undervalued as a former Tider. But I think Gentry also seemed like a guy who maybe was full of Bammer. And I'm wondering what I'm hoping for in this age of transfer portalness, that Khurtis Perry doesn't transfer. Now, I say he doesn't transfer. I say I hope he doesn't transfer because I wanted this kid so badly to be a superstar. Maybe
he doesn't leave either, because he's just got to exercise some patience. Alabama's a tough situation to get on the field, but it'll be worth it. Eventually you will get out there. And like, a good example, maybe this, I think Jamil Burrows, Jamarian Latham, those are guys that will be in the first team rotation. They didn't just show up and get out there in year 2 either. But they are now. And so I think Khurtis Perry will be fine. We just have to be a little patient, and he's got to be patient, and hopefully he doesn't lose his patience and leave, because again, even a situational role player, you need those guys to win championships. Not if somebody's out there thinking that the next time we'll win the national championship when we have 10 Quinnen Williams on our defensive line. Look, when we won a national title in the past, we didn't have 10 Quinnen Williams. We had 1, maybe 2, but you don't need 10. No one's ever had that, ever, anywhere.
All right, buddy. That's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more of your countdown and maybe another commitment. Who the heck knows what's going to be happening with the wonderful world of Alabama sports. So until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.